Okay.
3, 2, 1, go. Hey, it's Bibster Talks 2, and my mic is way too loud because apparently that's how it was. Hey, welcome back to Bibster Talks 2 podcast. And like I remember last time I said I wasn't going to take a year off like I did last year. Well, I am coming through with that promise. So we have Nathan Hanna on the phone today. He's from Little River Customs. I think I'm saying your name right, correct? Right, Nathan?
Yes, that's
okay.
right. That's right.
And he makes really cool guitar pedals. I know we've had guitar pedal people on here before, but these are definitely not your traditional enclosures. We'll start with that. And so Nathan, kind of introduce yourself to the listeners and kind of tell us a little bit about your company, and we'll kind of get going into that.
Okay, sure. Well, as you said, my name is Nathan Hanna, and I'm the owner here at Little River Customs, and I build everything myself. It's just me working in my shop. And it's like you said, one of the reasons I started doing this was to do weird enclosures and things. I didn't really like typical enclosures, so that's part of the reason I do this. But yeah, that's basically what I do. A lot of my stuff is custom work. People come to me and do things by request, and we're slowly transitioning into normal enclosures and expanding on that. But
Okay.
yeah, I like just doing cool, different builds that no one else has.
So
things that are different.
obviously you had to most people aren't Leo Fender and don't play the instrument that they perfect.
Right.
So how'd you get into
Right.
music, and what got you into guitar pedals, and where was that I want to start making my own thing kind of come from?
Sure. Okay. So, yeah, I've been playing guitar since I was probably 13 or 14, and I'm 28 now. So it's been, a few years. And I first got started music as far as I was in the band in 5th grade. I played the trumpet. So, I've always been a musical person. I played different instruments here and there. I play guitar in church about every week and bass. So I have a lot of background with guitar. And then as far as just my personal interest, I've always been interested in electronics and things like that. And I've had a few jobs here and there where I was doing it for a living, just circuit design and circuit testing, things like that, a lot of programming. So my hobbies just kind of combined, and that's where Little River Customs started. So it was like, in my free time, I was like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. And then when I discovered guitar pedals, when I was playing in church, I played a lot of like big multi-effects pedals like the Pod and the Helix and things like that. So when I started playing guitar, I didn't really use analog pedals for years, And then when I discovered them, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I could probably build these, and that's just what I did in my free time. I built a fuzz pedal here and there, did it for a hobby. And then I was like, hey, I really enjoy doing this. So that's, like I said, I had an electronics background, and then I also was a musician, obviously. So it just combined. It just came natural, however you want to word it there.
Yeah, it was just your hobbies kind of expanded into wanting to change tones. And I think you see that a lot. Either guitar players, at a certain point, they either say, I want to try and build one, with a kit, or I want to try and make, there's a ton of really cool kits out there where either guitar or pedal where you can start off, and if you have mild soldering skills, you can at least try it. Now, like I say that my soldering skills are so subpar still, I don't trust myself to make anything more than an electrical connection on an 82-year-old tractor. But,
Right.
So where did you said you kind of were changing and kind of got into the analog, we're thinking about the analog. Where did the design for, putting them into car models? I'm sitting here, I got your Mustang model, the 302 orange one I have of yours. Where did that design start with, or that idea?
Okay, so there's really two main factors that influenced my decision, because that's, I've done all sorts of enclosures, weird things, but cars are what I'm really known for, is model cars and hot rods and things like that, and with pedals built into those. So my dad died in a car wreck when I was just 8. He died in a bad accident, and that's one of the few things I can remember, was that he was a hot rod guy. He always had muscle cars, and he was always like fixing them up and buying them and selling them, and he was just a big car guy. He always drove really cool classic cars, and that's one of the only things I can remember about him. So it's kind of personal, it's got some sentimental value there. Mm-hmm. I've always been interested in cars just for that. I'm not a very great mechanic myself. I'm not good at working on cars. I just love them, I just always like hot rods and things like that. So that's part of the reason that I started doing that. And another big reason is because when I started doing this, I'd never seen it before. There was one other car pedal I'd seen. I think it was a Dr. No Effects. It was like a Falcon Buzz or something like that. Mm-hmm. I saw that, and so I started Googling. I'm like, man, this is really cool. There's a pedal in a car. So I Googled around and tried to do some research, and I couldn't find any more, like anywhere. So the only one I really saw available, it was like a tune-off Buzz, and it was really expensive, and there was no options on it. So I was like, that's a really cool idea, but that's it, and it's really expensive, Yeah. So I was thinking, hey, it would be cool if you had like a custom shop, like a real car custom shop where you could build stuff from the ground up, or just have some, some options, some choices. And that's pretty much where Little River Customs started. I'm like, I want to do a custom pedal shop and even if it's not just cars, just custom pedals where everybody has, people have the choice. You can, if you want a knob color or if you want a paint color, any just options, be able to say, hey, I want that in a pedal. Can you build it? And, like a custom shop. And so I say, sure. And that's the other big thing. So those two factors right there is basically what influenced me to do Little River Customs as far as hot rod cars. And a lot of them are custom, Sometimes, like most of my builds, people come to me and they say they want something. But in my downtime, I'll just build random stuff and sneak it into Reverb stores and Instagram and Facebook, So if you ever see anything about on Reverb, just randomly listed, that's just me in my downtime getting bored, But I do a lot of stuff per request too. So, but that's the background, My dad was naturally a car guy, and then I didn't see anywhere that was doing custom builds like that. So I was like, it'd be cool if somebody could offer that, and there we go.
Well, yeah, and I think that is something I like that on my pedal board, which isn't even that crazy. I have a few pedals that's in between this one, and then I have one. I have a couple that a couple years ago, Brian Wampler was like doing pedal like mods on like old Metal Zone pedals. So I have an EQ pedal. Right. I have a Metal Zone that's an EQ. That's always a joke because I get to leave it on all the time because my EQ pedal. But people that like guitar players come up and like, you're playing in church and you got a Metal Zone that's just always on. I'm like, yeah, it's always on. It's my tone, but and it's just something different because every time I look at that pedal, I think of that like, oh, that's a cool, it's not just I went to Guitar Center and picked this pedal up, or I was on YouTube and I saw 300,000 reviews of the same pedal in the same day, so I better go buy it. So I can look cool. I like the custom touch, and I've looked at with some of my other pedals that I have of like trying to replace certain ones. Like, okay, if I have this one. Because I have a goal of like knowing or talk to all the people that have built every pedal. So at least now we've checked that knock. So the Mustang gets to go on that board. But But yeah, I think that's just something that's there's some in that market. But unique enclosures is cool because as guitar players, I feel like we really half the time our pedal board is there so that other guitar players can look at it and we can play cool. Right. And so when you have something like that, it always brings that conversation of like, what's that? What's that? You have a car on your pedal board? Like, yeah, that lights up really cool. What was do you remember what the first model of car that you put a pedal in, and what kind of pedal was it?
Oh yeah, totally. I remember. I've got every build I do. I have like a master list of every build. They're all numbered and everything. So I've been trying to keep up with that. But the very first one, and what basically inspired me to keep going, it was one of my dad's model cars that he left me before he passed away. It was a '57 Chevy, a Bel Air. It's like the penultimate American muscle car, and it's really one of my personal favorites too. It's just a beautiful car. But it was a '57 Chevy. It was red and white, and the pedal I didn't build my own. In the first one, I rehoused one. It was a Soul Food. So good old Soul Food. So that seemed like a perfect match, for those two. I rehoused that into that, and I was like, man, this is awesome. It looked cool, it functioned cool, and it sounded cool. All the things you just mentioned. So, and it had some personal meaning to me. That's what I like. A lot of what I do, there's a little personal history to each one, or there's a specific need for the guitarist, So, but yeah, it's a '57 Chevy with a Soul Food rehousing to it. So that was the first car pedal. Technically, that was LRC build number 1, the first one I've ever done.
Oh, nice. So I'm assuming you still have that one. That wouldn't. So,
I've since taken it apart. It's been a couple years ago now. So, it's in the pedal junkyard basically. I have one of those.
It looks kind of like a car junkyard and pedal junkyard together.
Yeah, I'm a very indecisive person, and a lot of my personal builds like that, I'll mess around with them or try to perfect them. And it's hard for me to build one and just leave it sitting there as is,
Well, and you're talked about how they're your hot rods, and that's how
it's just like a real mechanic.
every car guy's like that. You think you have it done, and then I can go tweak on this a little bit, or I'll stare at that till I find something different. Or I was on YouTube and I saw this and I got to try it out. So it's funny that it's the same mindset, just in a different, but the same enclosure. So that's
on a small scale. I've got a mini, I got a mini junkyard down here, or a mini car shop going on, and got to get under the hood and fine tune it. But in this case, it's not a 350 motor. It's a overdrive pedal. Got to tweak some changes here and there. Yeah.
But I think that's cool. And it's just something different, and it's something that it also connects that. If you're in a rockabilly band and you don't have one of these on your board, you're doing something wrong.
Right. Because I've been telling people that a lot. Guitars and cars have always gone together from the very beginning. Yeah. And like a lot of people, I'm not sure if they know this, but like Leo Fender used the GM catalog for painting his guitars. That's why they have the names like Fiesta Red and the I'm trying to think of the green one right now. It's slipping my mind. All of those, all of his original colors, they're legit car paint, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was using paint on those. And, you know, looking through the history of all the bands that have car themes and things like that, you know, cars and guitars just go together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It only makes sense to have something like that on your board, you know, obviously.
Yeah. And
if you're into that sort of thing. So,
yeah, it
right.
totally is. And they're not, I mean, I remember when I got it, and I'll be, you know, straight up, I was like, I don't know if it's, you know, like, it's a cool looking thing, but, you know, like, I've used it, I've stepped on it, I'm a big guy, and I don't feel like I'm going to break the thing in half when I'm stepping on it, because it's a real model, like, it's a metal model car. Because that was the one I remember going, and I didn't realize, like, I was like, man, I'm like, it's a big pedal, which is nice. I have a big board, but you're like, it's not something that's just like, oh, you know, it's really a thought out thing. Like, yeah, I'm not scared to step on. Because that was one thing I was like, well, I'm not sure, you know, maybe I'll have it like on the music stand when I want to hit it, or maybe being always on, which for my normal music, I can't quite have this being an always on. It's a little gnarly, but I like it that way.
Right. But yeah, that's one of the first things, you know, a lot of people see what I'm doing here and they're kind of skeptical, and it's the same response. You know, I get that a lot. So I'm used to that. And my answer to it is always, you know, I try to put a little bit of design behind these, because I don't think we mentioned that earlier, but I actually went to college and I've got an associate's in design and drafting. So I have some background and things like that, some professional background to it, but not a lot. But I know how to design and think about things before I build them. And on these pedals, another reason I use model cars, specifically die-cast, is because it's the same exact thing guitar pedals are made out of. They're both made out of die-cast aluminum. And what that means is there's no welds or no screws holding the pedal together like on a regular guitar pedal. You know, if you look at the corners, they're seamless. It's one solid chunk of metal cast in a mold. That's what die-cast means.
Yep.
And the cars are made the same way. Like, they're almost made, it's made the same way a pedal's made. It's just one solid chunk of metal with a plate screwed on the bottom, just like a pedal. So in that sense, I mean, you're not really changing that much. You know, you might be worried about like a mirror or something here and there. And for stuff like that, you know, I do a warranty on my pedals. If something were to break or something like it happens, I have a warranty covering it. You know, it just seems like a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But design-wise, yeah, it's not any different than stepping on a regular pedal, really, because they're both made out of die-cast aluminum.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like the foot switch itself, you're stepping on the switch. You're not necessarily stepping on the car. A lot of people are like, man, I'm going to step on that car and break it. And I'm like, well, you're not, you know, stomping the whole car. You're turning a pedal on. You know, if you stomp on your pedals that way, it'd probably break them too, you know?
Yeah, it's not it's like if you're mashing them that hard, and, you know, I'll admit, I've, you know, been mistakenly going for one and, you know, smoking the other pedal on the way if you're not.
Right.
But it's like,
but, I mean,
it's not going to be anything that's going to happen. I mean, there are certain pedal brands out there that, you know, yes, you can, like, you know, light on fire, throw on the stairs, and, you know, they'll still work. But not everyone can be Boss pedals. It's like, you know, they've got to figure it out, or, you know, they've got an enclosure where it's all hidden, all that stuff, except for it's still just a plastic switch under that. But
that definitely makes sense. Yeah, you look at these pedals, you're like, man, it's, you know, it's a beautiful model car, and you're like, man, it's really pretty, or like, it looks very fragile, you know. But when you get it in person, you know, a lot of people not being able to see it in person and actually play it probably makes a difference. But, you know, you get it, and you're like, man, this is built like a tank. You know, I could probably gig with this. And I had one guy that told me that he bought my pedal for his studio board just because, you know, to record with, but he liked the sound of it so much, and it was actually roadworthy. He put it on his gigging board, but he didn't think it was going to be roadworthy to gig with, but he's been touring with it, so there you go.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and there's a lot more, like, I mean, from looking at the one I have, there's a lot of mass around where, like, where you can see the circuit boards at, so it's like, you could really have to do damage to it to actually hurt that board. Like, you might, like, okay, you maybe hit, like, do something where it hits the switch, but if anything that breaks the switch off, that would break a switch off a regular pedal. And
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's really not any different when you break it down like that. And if you design it, if you try to put some thought behind the designs, without, you know, the other thing, you know, try to lay it out smart. It actually transfers over very well, whether it's in a model car or just a regular aluminum pedal. You know.
So you we were talking before, and a little bit before we got recording. So you were at one point you were. This was part-time, and then it became full-time, and where's it sitting at now in the sense of, like, your day-to-day operations?
At first, it was just a hobby. I was doing it on the side, and then a lot of people saw it, and they're like, that's really cool. You know, you should try to do something with that. So, I had a reverb store where I'd buy and sell gear, just, you know, normal gear all the time. So I would put a few pedals on there every now and then, and they would usually sell pretty good. So that's what I was doing for a long time, just reverb only. And that's basically how I am now. I have a Facebook and Instagram and a reverb store. I haven't made an official website yet just because there's really hasn't been a need for it. But, like, as far as, you know, what I'm doing as a business, I have, you know, I was doing full time there for almost 3 years. I floated, you know, selling my pedals for a living there for almost 3 years. and I really enjoyed that. But then it got to where it's very stressful. I think me and you had talked about it earlier before this interview. Doing something like this is my hobby, and I love doing it. But once you go to where that's paying your bills, trying to put food on the table, it puts a lot of stress into the process. And just the general upkeep itself, having to pay for it, having to force yourself to do, keep building things to try to pay bills with it. It's just very stressful. And it's not really, stable. You never really know. One week I might make a lot. One week I might only sell 1 or 2 pedals. You never really know. So I was doing this for almost 3 years, like I said, full time. And then I decided to go ahead and pick up another day job and just help support this and kind of slide back into where this was a part-time deal, but I still want to be serious about it. I would love to be at the point, where I was like any other pedal company, I suppose, like JHS or I don't really know who to compare to at this point. Just a regular pedal company making pedals, that would be cool. But I'm actually happier doing this as a hobby because what I do specifically is a lot of custom pedals, a lot of unique things. I'm not really popping out 10 pedals at a time here. I'm doing just one, like one specific build, or it's custom work versus factory, use thing.
Yeah, instead of assembly, like a regular assembly job.
In a sense, it's a lot better for me just to stay small time like this and just doing them, job by job. Yeah, well, it's just easier. And
I think at a certain point you hit that wall of, as you were saying, where it's like I either have to go and make this into either a mini factory where I going to work all day is I'm making 100 of the same pedals and punching them out and box. It's like, or you can have it where it's fun and it's a hobby or not a hobby, but I mean it's a side, it's kind of a side gig, and that way it's not as there's not that pressure on. Like if you don't sell, you're not having to go home and being like, we didn't sell any pedals this week, we can't eat, or versus having a little more security there and being able to have fun with it. I have some other friends that have gone that way of where they're doing full-time pedals. I think of Cody Fields with Westminster Effects over there in South Carolina. And he's at that level, but it's it's a lot of you also have to have a few people there that are to support to make that all work, and then then you run into issues where a fast food company sends you a cease and desist, and it's like fun things like that when you're flying under the radar still, you're not having to worry about as much now. So are you doing your own circuit boards then? I mean, obviously there's like a baby circuit, so you're designing that, you're printing that all on your own.
Yes, I've done a lot of different ranges as far as that goes. I've done, the strip board builds and just point to point, some of that I do by request. Some people prefer the way it looks when it's point to point versus having a circuit board, even though functionally a circuit board's a better thing. They like the grassroots feel and whatnot. But since I majored in that design, I have a lot of background with this sort of thing. So I'm working, at first people wanted like a clone of something. They would come say, hey, can you build me a tube screamer, but put it in this or that or whatever, things of that nature. I've done a lot of that, a lot of requests, but I have original circuits that are original to me, original designs, and I have those printed on circuit boards. So sometimes, I'm trying to get where I can use those more often. And like I said at the very beginning of the interview, I would eventually like to have just a run of normal enclosure pedals, because that would be the smartest choice to give people more options and whatnot. For people that don't want a car or something, I can have an LRC branded pedal range, maybe eventually. But as far as the circuits themselves, yes, I do have. I have them. I design them myself and send them off and have them printed out on a circuit board and plant that inside the car. Yeah,
perfect.
So, and there's a wide range. I have everything from a fuzz to I've got a delay, a fuzz, overdrive, your basics, and then I also have really advanced digital effects, and that's what I try to specialize in because I have some programming background. So my favorite thing to do is like reverbs and delays and things of that nature. A lot of digital, you don't see that in the small time independent builders. They don't really mess with digital very much. They're more just analog dirt or fuzz or overdrive or something like that. So
yeah,
so the digital world's where I like to hang out at. But yeah, I've done all kinds of things. Yeah.
So that brings up this topic then. So what of all the effects, what is, you've kind of hinted already, but what's your favorite, 2 questions. What's your favorite effect to build? And what's your favorite effect to use when you play?
Right. So the favorite thing to use when I play, I'll start off with that. It's definitely a delay. Like if I was on a desert island with my dream guitar set up and just one pedal of my choice, it would be a delay. Like I wouldn't care if it was just a cheap 3-knob or an advanced one. That's my favorite effect, and it's just a good overall well-rounded thing because a delay can be a reverb if it has a short time. But reverb can't be a delay, so it's versatile, but it's just a cool sound. That's my favorite thing. So as far as playing, I like to have just a regular old delay pedal. as far as building, I'm not really sure. Circuit wise, I really like doing overdrives in dirt because they're simple, they're easier to build, it's versus a big complex circuit. A fuzz and a distortion pedals are simpler and easier to build. A lot of guys, you said, they'll do that. There's a lot of hobbyists out there that build their own fuzz pedals and things like that. So it's easier. And it's a joy to build. It's part of the reason I do it, just because I'm a nerd like that. I like electronics and circuit. The build itself is fun to me, just the process, So, yeah, probably distortions and drives are my favorite things to build.
Nice.
Because they're simple and they're very rewarding when you get one done. Like if you build a fuzz pedal and it works when you step on it the first time, it's just a very rewarding feeling,
Oh, yeah, it's that wall of sound. Versus, I'm sure with when you get on the digital side of things, there's a lot more that can be raw, and so it's instead of that excitement of the first time you hit it, you're pretty sure it's gonna work. You're like, please let this repeat the sound I'm making. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
It's like that, it's that simple thing better. But that's interesting because it's a lot of players. Delay isn't their. I don't know. Maybe it's people I talk to because we're all just a bunch of. I call it power chord for Jesus because I like to play rhythm, so it's easy. But so we're like, I want 15 levels of dirt, and then I don't know, just throw whatever reverb you have on there on the end, and then we'll call that probably enough.
Right.
So
no, when I'm here, see, I'm in Lickskillet, Alabama. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Big old redneck, like a lot of anybody, any old country boy, I guess. But I'm a nerd too. I like outer space and things like that. So when I'm here at the house jamming, I like a big spacey ambient reverb and a big delay. You see that in church a lot, I suppose. Big ambient sounds,
swells for days.
Delays, so. Yeah, definitely. So I'm all about that when I'm just here at the house jamming. I like to space out. Yeah, that's why I like delay.
That's true, and that is good. So let's talk a little more about your rig, because again, I like to nerd out a little bit. So what's your favorite guitar rig? If you were, I always, the atypical question is always, what's your desert island rig? And it's always, I want a generator. But,
Sure.
One guitar, so you have your delay pedal, but what's your guitar, what's your amp? Talk a little bit about what you would have or what you actually have.
Right. Well, I mentioned earlier, I'm a very indecisive person, so I like having a very versatile guitar, one that can do a little bit of everything. So ideally, like right now, it's kind of weird and random, but I have an Ibanez 7-string, and not necessarily Ibanez as a brand, but any 7-string in general is my guitar I prefer. And I'm not like a metal person or a gent chug person, That's what they're associated with a lot.
Yes.
But 7-strings were invented for jazz players. They were invented for cleans and things like that because you get that extra lower register, so you can make the same reasons metal bands like them a lot. You get those really low tones, but it makes beautiful cleans too. So I have a 7-string I play into the majority of my pedals on my board are ones that I built myself, but I've got a few store-bought things I like to jam on. And the amp, as far as an amp, I'm not really too picky. Although I do consider the amp that you're playing to be probably the most important, part of your sound.
Yes.
The amp to me is like 80% of the tone to me is what amp you're playing through.
Yeah.
But I've got a Marshall Master League combo that I picked up at Guitar Center. It's a solid state, but it's a really cool amp. It's like from the 80s, I think. I use that here at the house a lot because it just takes pedals really well. It's not very loud, but when you drive it with a dirt or something, it's perfect,
Yeah, and when you're at home, you don't always need to be that loud.
But for amps, I like Marshall. I like them a lot for distorted pedals. And then for cleans, I'm a Fender guy all day long. I really like Fender amps as far as preferences. Yeah,
it's definitely the choice for that. I mean, it's kind of one of those. It's just funny how for guitars, it's like there's basically you want this tone. Okay, that's exactly what you're gonna have. Like, there's not much, there's not too much where there's some new players in there, but at the same time, you're like, oh yeah, someone can do it, but you're just making the same. You're making the same circuit. You're just maybe doing it, a little more precise or adding this or that. But essentially, you're either trying to find the Vox, the Fender, or the Marshall sound, and basically that's your three options.
Right, pretty much. And no matter what amp you're playing, most of them usually have a model that's imitating one of those.
Yeah.
But really, I'm not, like I said, amp is very important in your tone. To me, that's more important than the guitar you're playing. A lot of people focus mainly on their pickups and their guitar, or this or that, or their certain pedals. But really, if you're a tone chaser, start with a good amp and then build outwards from that. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I know when I first started playing.
At the same time, an amplifier, its purpose is just to make your sound louder. So, if it turns on and is loud, that's all I'm happy with,
Yeah, that's also true.
Right.
It's always good. I was started off. My first amp was like a Mustang 1, little like 8-inch Fender, and I remember being like, oh, this isn't bad. And then like I got a Katana, and I'm like, oh, That's why
Right.
12-inch speakers are better. Like that
Yeah,
makes way more sense.
Right.
And I'll never turn the other one back on. But yeah, I mean, it was just, like, oh, that's why a good amp is more expensive and, a
Yeah.
decent price, because it just is that much better. It's that much more usable. And I think as a guitar, when I started off, at least that was like my last, like, oh yeah,
Right.
amp, I'll just find something that'll kind of work. And then now it's like, instead of trying to look for guitars, I'm trying to look for old 5-watt tube amps so I can play them in my house at loud, or quote unquote loud, which is just so they're on breakup. Because
Right.
yeah, that was my other discovery. I think I made like 2 years ago. I was like, oh, that's why everyone likes valve amps so much more. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get that volume up there, huh?
You're like,
Yeah.
that sounds.
You can hear yourself in the mix too. Yeah.
You're like, huh, that does sound better. But yeah, I mean, again,
Right.
and then again, it's from the guy that plays at church, and we're going direct in, so we're never, our stage volume is like null, and I'm like, whatever. Which is why
Right.
my Pod 500X stays at church, because I'm like, all right, plug in my XLR, plug in my guitar, worship tutorials, give me a sound, we're good to go.
Right.
So-
Right.
So
Yeah, and if you want to touch on like the signal chain, basically, you'd think that me being a pedal builder, I'd build just 100 pedals and have a crazy collection laying around, but I really don't. My pedal board is actually pretty simple as far as the layout goes, and we can touch on that if you'd like.
Yeah,
if you'd like
yeah.
to know what I'm playing through. Yeah. So
sure.
my personal board here at the house, what I've got that I play on more than anything when I'm just jamming or whatever. If I was gigging with it, I've got it set up where I can gig if I wanted to. It's very simple. I have my signal chain goes from guitar into a tuner, into 2 dirt pedals. I have 2 overdrives. One is a Zen Drive clone that I built, and the other one is a Rush Driver clone that I built. So it's just 2 dirt pedals for a little gain stage in there. I've got those running into a noise gate. It's one of those newer Donner Intelligent. It's the Donner Intelli series, I think is the right name. I'm not sure, but it's a noise gate with an effects loop basically, and I really like that feature.
okay.
Yeah, it's a soft gate's the model number on it. It's a pink pedal, their model name. I mean,
Is
Donner
it,
soft gate's what it's called.
is it
But
kind of
it's a
like
noise gate.
is it like the Boss NS2 where it's got that loop where it's
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
you can run your main signal in and out, and then there's like a loop in the send and return, just like an effects loop. And you can put noisy dirt pedals in that loop and keep the feedback from being whatever. And you can use it as an effects loop if you have both of them on all the time, like I do now. That's how I've got it set up. I keep both of my drives on. They're both of them are running all the time, no matter what, for the heavy gain. So it just saves you from tap dancing to run them in that loop on that pedal, and that's how I've got it set up. So 2 drives, a tuner into 2 drives basically into a noise gate. And then that goes into a delay, into another delay, and then into a modulation, and into a reverb, and then my loopers at the very end. So it's very simple.
Yeah.
But I like I'm a 2 delay kind of person. I really like those. I've seen some tutorials about it on YouTube before, and I agree after personal experience. If you like big ambient tones, like church stuff, or just outer space sounds, 2 delays is the way to go, because you can set one long and one short, and have, once you get those times synced together right, you have that ping pong delay sound, and it's just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Westminster chick delay, and it's got 2 bucket braid chips in it, so you can set them. You can set them that way, and so like when I first got it, because I was like, oh, and it was again the realization. After talking to me, I realized as a hack guitar player, and when I discover actually good gear, I'm like, oh, that's what they're going for, because I played that and I put them offset, and I was like, oh, that's that ping pong sound. I like that.
Yeah.
Because going from some cheapo digital delay that just went basically to that.
Right, it's awesome. Yeah, and that's one of the things I learned after, when I started building guitar pedals, I never used analog pedals hardly at all. But now that I've built them, I've built a bunch, I use them more than anything. So I really didn't know that much about them going into it. And I'm still learning about a lot of store name, store-bought branded pedals. I'm not very familiar with a lot of them. I'm still learning as I go on that. But I had a really strong background in circuits and electronics. So in that sense, I was used to the circuit part of it. I'm just not used to running a full chain and all that, pedals. So it's a learning process. No matter, it doesn't matter if you're a rocket scientist coming into this or just an average Joe out there, like some people are that like doing electronics as a hobby. Either way, when you start building pedals, it's a learning process, just like anything else. You got, it's a brand new thing. You got to just have some experience with it,
Yeah, there's not.
So I had kind of a middle ground. Yeah, I was like, I had some background in electronics, but I didn't really have a lot of experience with guitar pedals themselves. So I'm still learning as I go. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that's really a good point. You have to get into it, because there's not there's more stuff out there now for how to build a pedal on YouTube. But
Yeah, there's
it's
a lot
still
more guys doing it too.
it's
Right.
yeah, there's a lot more people in that industry, and there's a lot more people sharing the secrets. For so long it was like, we don't want to tell people how they're doing this.
Right.
It's like
Right.
it used to be like the high end boutique pedals. They were throwing stuff on the back so you wouldn't look at them.
Right.
Now versus everyone's like, oh, this is what the pedal is like, and then they send it out to people that are like pulling the back off, like, look at this, because people
Right.
know, but they also know too, like, because everything kind of changes things. You can have the exact same, all the same parts, and it's going to sound differently because of tolerances and all those parts. So,
Yes, exactly.
and what I
Right.
think, and that's what I like about pedals, it's like technically every pedal it's not custom, but every pedal's kind of custom because there's variances in all the parts. So you could have two pedals, line the knobs up the same, and there might be some changes in there. There might not also, and it also means too, like, when someone's like, oh, well, that's the, you have to get that colored knob one because that's the better one. You're like, well, maybe.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I think I don't know. Pedals are fun, and they're I don't know, as a guitar player, it's just an easy. I mean, we're addicted to all of the gear we have, but pedals are the easiest one to, like. They don't come in a big box when you're trying to get them into the house, so that's easy that way.
Right.
And you go. It's fun to switch them out, and when you got buddies that play guitar, it's nice to be able to trade around and try and find your own tone.
And it's like, a lot of guys I run into, they're like, oh, you don't need pedals, old fashioned people, just play a guitar and do that, this and that. But really, I don't see it as that, as like cheating. Like used to, I might think, it didn't require any talent to play pedals. You can just turn that delay pedal on, it does all the work for you. You sound cool, And it definitely helps. It does facilitate your playing, obviously. But that's why I like it. It's a tool. It helps you. It's just, I don't know. I'm not one of those guys that like just doesn't think you have to have pedals. But when I first started playing, I never played with them a lot. And part of it might have been a little bit of that. But just after building them and, having more experience with guitar pedals in general, I'm like, yeah, this is really cool. I don't see why people would be why they would think it's something you don't necessarily need, because it helps. And it's not just because I'm sitting here playing, I don't have to play heavy, like, complicated notes or anything like that, or heavy, a lot of, I don't know how to word it exactly. You don't have to have a lot of skill to play this certain passage. I can just turn my delay on, and that's the thing. You have to keep it simple. If you're playing a delay or reverb, you have, simpler runs do sound better, like, 3-note runs or whatever on a reverb. It sounds better than a complex passage. But the point I'm trying to get across is pedals are a tool that helps you play, especially if you're gigging for a living or anything like that. It's just like going out and buying tools for your job. If you're like a construction person, buying a saw or something to help you do that. These pedals can help you shape your tone, especially overdrive pedals and things like that. It's another tool on your, another tool on your workbench, basically, if you're a professional musician, for sure. Yeah.
It's like it's another, and I kind of look at it like everything we touch as guitar players, everything that's in our signal chain is part of the instrument. A lot of people just take it, you're playing the guitar, and then the rest of the stuff but I'm like, but being able to set the amp the way you want, and set your EQ by your, having the ear to be able to hear if your EQ's right, and having the pedals sound right. That takes just as much like a musical ear and talent and thought process and practice of realizing that doesn't sound good. That does sound good, because
exactly.
Someone that doesn't know how to play guitar won't be able to pick it up and make it sound good. Also, someone that doesn't know anything about pedals won't be able to just like blindfoldedly change the knobs and go, okay, that should sound good. I mean, there's a thought process there.
It's a learning process, definitely, for sure. Yeah. Because I was the same way. Like there was, like I said, I never really messed with store-bought pedals before I started building them. But I used to have a few here and there. And I remember at one point, I had a Big Sky on my board at church for a while. I was a Strymon Big Sky. And when I first bought that, it was before I was building pedals. I didn't know how to work the thing. Like it was so complex. I'm like, man, it's got a lot of knobs, a lot of settings, all this. I didn't know jack about that.
I don't know.
But then after owning the pedal, I got more familiar with it. But then, after playing. Now that I've been building guitar pedals, not just because I've built them, but because I've got more experience with individual effects, I understand a lot more. I don't have the Big Sky anymore, but I feel like if I were to have it again, just after playing with reverb and delay for a while, I'd probably know how to dial it in and love it, Which I'm not knocking on the Big Sky. It's an awesome pedal. I wish I still had it. I used to have I have gear acquisition syndrome like any other guitarist. I trade and sell and trade and all that all the time, changing gear all the time. But like what I was saying, as you were just hinting at just a minute ago, once, pedals is a learning process. After you've been playing with them for a while, it makes a lot more sense. And then in that respect, you learn how to make them sound so much better, You can dial in your sound. It really makes a difference. And to me, yeah, it really helps, especially like playing at church and things like that. When you're playing out for other people, it just makes you sound, so much better. A lot of people will notice, they're like, hey, your sound sounds different this week or something like that, sound really good today.
And there's other times, there's like, you always have the joke too, like, at the same time, there's people that are like, oh, that sounded good. And there's other people that I'm like, you know what? If I forget to turn this delay on for this song, I don't think, Sister Better Than You is going to realize that I wasn't playing the right thing. Like we were talking the one time and I'm like, yeah, if there's a guitar player out there, he might notice what I'm doing. Like, I think I was the one, it's because I have a Schecter Telecaster copy and it's my only guitar with a Bigsby, and I have just absolutely fallen in love with it. And so, needless to say, I have become just I'm all over that thing whenever I'm doing swells. And the one Sunday I was, and our worship leader is like, man, that sounded good. I was like, yeah, I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna overuse it now, because now that I've made it sound like that, I'm like, oh, okay, just woo 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 woo, like, and it was like the next service. I had that thing in my hand the whole time, and I'm like, got two songs, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm way out of tune now. I've screwed this too much, but it's that same thing, and a lot of it's, as a guitar player, it helps your confidence out of like, I think this sounds good, I'm gonna be able to hit it, versus like, oh, what is that? Like, when you know your tone and you know what it's supposed to sound like, you know what you want it to sound like. You're not worried about that. You're just worried about hitting the notes, not worrying about, oh, is that other pedal on? And that's why, like, for me, a Big Sky's always been like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna need like 15 books to learn how that works, and I'm still gonna be like, huh? I hit a knob wrong? Oh man, like,
right? Yeah, totally. That's what I'm saying. Like, when I first bought it, I was just lost, because I never really messed with a lot of different reverbs and delays. I knew basics, but that one just has a lot to offer. So it was a combination of it just being a new pedal, but also me not being familiar with pedals in general, But now that I've played them a lot more, I could dial it in, and I would, like I said, I would have been happy to have had that on my board. I'm like, man, this is a great part of my sound. It's very helpful to have this. I'm glad I've got it. So versus some people that are, skeptical about pedals in general. You don't need pedals to sound good. Well, you can't make a reverb sound with just a guitar.
Well, it's like the classic, Jimi Hendrix only had this and this pedal. I'm like, yeah, and those pedals had just come out. And he already had them on his board and was using them all the time. Like, it's not like...
He was a big pioneer for effects. I thought about that a lot. Like, if he was still alive now, he would be all over some of the pedals we got now. He'd be all about it.
Oh,
He'd have a full board probably. A lot of musicians back then would. And it's exactly what you said. Pedals haven't been around that long. When all these big guitars people want to compare that to were big, back in the 60s and 70s, pedals were just now being invented. The first pedals were invented in the 60s, I think.
Yeah.
I had to Google it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Josh and they were started, and then in the 70s they picked up, and they were really, but there really weren't hardly any. They were just now being invented. So about, the 80s and 90s is when pedals were starting to take off, and that's, not very long ago. It's still fairly new thing.
It's fairly recently, and it's fairly like, there weren't
new technology. Right.
I think the next like 10 or 20 years for pedals is where you're going to see, it's going to grow. I feel like at a certain point there's going to be a crest of a mountain, because I feel like, every 2 weeks we find somebody else like, oh, they're making this new pedal. This just got released. I mean, and I went through and I used to watch gear demos all the time. It just made me want to buy more pedals. And so I realized at one point, I'm like, wait, maybe if I tone this down a little bit, I won't want every brand new pedal that comes out. But that's the hard part, because there's so much. So when that's, just to talk about like with what you're doing, what sets you apart from everyone else, like, yeah, you're making your own overdrive circuit, but you're putting it in a model car, and suddenly that changes you in the market. You're not just, it's in a basic enclosure, which some people want that, but people might want that, but they're going to first come to you because they said, hey, you're the guy that puts them in cars. You're the guy with the Ghostbusters, ambulance, Echoplex. It's like all this stuff that, that's how they're going to find you. And I think that's what's cool about what you've done is find an area in the market that is not being utilized, take advantage of it, and then shape that into and not just staying in that. You're not just like, well, I'm the guy that puts them in car models, so it's all I do.
Right. It's just a way to stand out. You just hinted on that a minute ago. Pedals, there's a lot of guys right now. There's 100 different independent builders I can think of off the top of my head. If you look on Instagram or on Facebook very much, you see different homemade pedal companies popping up everywhere. It's a blossoming thing. So there's a lot of factors in why I'm doing what I'm doing, but that was part of it. It just helps you stand out, and you have to do that anytime you're in an industry that's like manufacturing or and what I do is borderline art, artistic. You have to have something that's unique to you that helps you stand out among all the others. There's just there's so many different kinds of pedals, like you said, so many different guys doing Cube Screamer phones right now. But what makes that one different? And that helps me stand out like that among the rest. But also, like you said, it gives you something unique. And 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 you hinted at that a minute ago too. Not necessarily that I'm always going to be doing cars or this or that, but I just wanted to offer something that was individual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the custom aspect comes into play. Even if I was doing a pedal in a regular enclosure, I still like being able to give the custom option, color choices or whatever,
And I think in today's time, everyone kind of is looking for that. And that,
Yeah.
we lean so far into the I can Amazon Prime anything in 2 days. To we've gone
Right.
so far that way that now everyone wants that. Oh, I got a buddy that's about 45 minutes away from here that he builds custom guitars. And when I first met him, I was like, okay, does he do kits? And he goes, oh no, here's this neck blank I haven't cut out yet, that he glued together. I'm like, oh, you mean you do? He goes, yeah, I do the whole thing. I'm like, oh,
Right.
but I mean, it's that same thing. Yeah, everybody can go and buy a guitar off a shelf, but if you can find somebody that's like, oh, I made this custom, then every time you play it, you're thinking of that versus,
Yes.
I'm not really sure where this came from. And I think in
Right.
today's time, that's going to grow more and more as people are trying to find that that market for anything, not just guitar pedals, for
Right.
any kind of thing.
You want something that's got a cool story behind it, or something that's unique.
Mm-hmm.
Like when somebody requests something from me, there's usually a reason for that. If they want if they want a movie car, like a model car that's in a movie, like a Mystery Machine or something like that. They like Scooby as a kid. They're just Scooby fans now, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It has a meaning to them, or even if it's not like an established brand or something like that. Some people come to me and just want, I've done a lot of regular enclosures that were custom for the same reason. People just wanted something that had more meaning, or more unique personal connections to them,
Mm-hmm.
Like some people like chrome on something. I had one guy I did a chrome pedal for, he likes chrome. He's a car guy, so I did a chrome enclosure, Instead of just going and saying, hey, I went out and bought this overdrive here or there, it actually has a little bit more meaning behind it, So that's what people like. Yeah.
Well,
More personal.
And it makes it where it's a particular, for me, it's a piece of gear. Like, that's not one. I mean, there's other pedals that I'm like, oh yeah, I might buy and Charles and say, kind of pilfer these around.
Right.
That's like, no, that one stays. Like, that one's never going anywhere. So it's,
Right,
it becomes part of that. And that's what I think is just kind of cool about it. It's just something that, I think like, maybe I'm silly when I think this way, but I'm like, oh, if one of my kids someday is interested in playing guitar, this might be a pedal. They're like, oh, I remember playing my dad's car pedal, versus,
Totally. Right.
there's not many kids. I mean, there might be, but it's like, I remember playing my dad's Boss Overdrive pedal. Like, yeah, maybe, but the one that looks like a car is gonna be way cooler.
Right.
So I think there's some of that with that whole aspect and that thought process.
Oh, yeah.
But
Totally. Yeah. Right.
But yeah, so Nathan, we've been going here for a while. I know you probably got we're in the same time zone, but still, we're definitely we're going to have to talk because at some point I got to figure out a way for you to put a closure into a tractor pedal or some kind of tractor thing. I got to figure that out. I'm gonna go out to the garage.
Hey, no, see, that's the cool thing. I run into that a lot. A lot of people just come to me and they're like, "Hey, you think we can do this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. We'll try it and see." I enjoy it. That's part of the reason I do it too. Is I enjoy the challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
No, a lot of my stuff. I've done multiples of the same thing, but more often than not, I'm doing something different every time, and it's like a puzzle, So I enjoy it. Yeah, totally.
We have to
I haven't
figure
done
that
a
out.
tractor before, so that should be a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go out and see because I have like a pile of just random tractor parts. But we can put it into that.
Sure.
One of the ones.
And see, I've done that before. Yeah, there are people that brought me stuff before and said, "Hey, can you make a pedal on this?" Which is something you can't do that I know of anywhere else. Like,
No.
Can you take somebody, let's say you have like a trinket box or something that belonged to your grandmother, your granddad or something, can you take that and say, hey, put a pedal on this for me, and a dude will do that,
Yeah, that's
and
what's
that
cool.
also touches on one other thing I want to bring up that we haven't really brought up yet.
Yes.
Sorry if I'm running into your time here.
Oh, no, go ahead.
One of the things I like model cars or just random objects in particular is because, I've always been interested in many models and things from my design background. I like models of things, but so I have a lot of collectible, I got action figures, I've got cars, model cars, I got things like that here at the house. But to me, especially the model car pedals specifically, it gives them a purpose other than just collecting dust on a shelf. Hey, I've got this model car I love, but it's actually a pedal. I can use it, To me, it just gives it another life, another purpose. So that's another cool aspect of what I do, I think. That might make people interested in having something like that,
Yeah.
It's like, I love these model cars, but they're just sitting there, they don't really do much, which I've got things I enjoy having here to look at, but just giving them another purpose.
Yeah, I never thought about it. I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, it makes a really good point. I mean, my dad's got a huge toy tractor collection. I won't be able to do any of those, but but it's the same thing. It's like, okay, we can just look at him. I mean, we laugh because when he was my age, he was living where he couldn't just go buy tractors, and I'm like, Dad, like if you just take half of this like collection away, you can have a whole tractor there. No, I know it's not the same, but that's what I thought. Right. But it's that same kind of a thing where it's like it does something. You can take it with you.
It makes you enjoy having it around a little bit better. You get some use out of it, which. I can't say anything. Like I said, I've got model cars here on a shelf I like to just look at, So everybody collects something usually in some form or another. Everybody has a collection of something most of the time. But like for me, it's cars, yeah. And so being able to gig with them, hey, I can take this on the road with me and play it or take it to church or something like that. It's more enjoyable that way to me.
Yeah, totally. It's a conversation starter. I like that, that aspect of it. Somebody, and the thing is like for me, I think about it because at some point I'm getting really close to going from my just modeler in a box to going back to the pedal board. I'm like one pedal away from doing. I'm gonna probably end up getting the Westminster. It's their Vox pedal in a box that Cody makes. It's really nice. And I'm thinking about getting that and then going back to a pedal board. But I'm like, man, I'm like the car's coming because I'm like, I know I'm gonna have some guy at church. It's like one of the car guys at church. Like, wait, that's a model car up there. Like, yes, it is.
And then if you've seen, I haven't posted any pictures of my board, but I've got. My board looks like a car show or something, or like a cruise-in party or something. It's a bunch of model cars, like a parking lot sitting there, But that's my pedal board, and then I turn it on, and that's my signal chain. It really is the wow factor there.
Yeah, that is cool.
Really get some attention for sure. Yeah, man.
Yeah, put that up. I'll put a link to your pages, Facebook and Instagram. They'll be in the description if you're watching. If you're listening on the YouTube or any of the podcast apps, or if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be really listening because there's not really much. I'm not gonna have much to show here, but they'll be in the description down below. Check those out. If you're interested in any of Nathan's pedals, there's ways to contact him through there. If there's an email or something that you have, send that to me. I'll put that down there as well.
Yeah, totally. And thanks for having me. And that's that people have asked me, do you have a website or something like that? And at one point, I'd like to have one, but usually the best way to get a hold of me is just shoot me an email or just hit me up through my Facebook page or Instagram because a lot of what I do is by request. So it's not like I can just pop something out and say, here you go. People usually have to contact me and talk ideas and whatnot, things like that. So that's the best way to do it, really, for me personally. Yeah.
Perfect. But yeah, so there'll be links in that in the description. So if you have any questions, let it know. So tell me you heard about it here. Jeez, I can't talk. It's getting late.
Yeah.
But hang on, Nathan. We'll talk a little bit afterwards. But for Bibster Talks 2, don't forget if you're listening on Apple, please leave a review. That really does help. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. I say it every time. But for Bibster Talks 2, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.